So the Celtics season is over, their offseason begins, and their offseason could result in 9 million different things happening, and I'm going to attempt to try to grasp at least some of them, because I know I'm going to miss something here, but I think it starts with Kyrie. So if Kyrie stays, then that opens up the floodgates for them trading for probably Anthony Davis or some other star that randomly becomes available. And I guess we'll stay there for a little bit before I open up the idea of if Kyrie leaves. So if Kyrie were to stay, you got to assume that Horford accepts his player option, and then I think even if they were not able to trade for Anthony Davis, I think there's some reason to believe that they wouldn't just repeat this year again. Now, there's reason to believe that no matter what they do, if Kyrie comes back, then this team's passive aggressiveness and edginess and just weirdness might return because he might be the source of all of it. But if we can be optimistic and say running it back and making some adjustments could actually lead to this team finally being what we thought they were going to be this year, that could be started with letting Terry Rozier go. I mean, he attempted, 7 to 10 shots a game for them this year, and he had the ball quite a lot, and you would think that those 20 minutes and all those possessions that he would take over, and he would ruin, not even just with a shot, but maybe he over-dribbles for too long or whatever. And instead of him having the ball, now it's in Hayward's hands more often, and Hayward, we hope, is going to be back to Jazz Hayward at this point. More plays for Tatum, more plays for Jalen. That could be really good for this team. Now, even so, they would still have their jump shot problem because they just don't get to the line enough, and you would hope that they can solve that internally. But in terms of the team just making more sense, letting Terry Rozier walk could be step one if Kyrie were to stay. I guess you can have a similar conversation with Marcus Morris. The difference is he was actually good for them this year, even if he occasionally shot too much, so I could picture them keeping him around. But if we are also going to talk about Kyrie potentially staying, then we got to bring up Anthony Davis. So an AD trade is probably, bare minimum, it's Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and picks. If it eventually becomes Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, picks, and whatever, would I do it if I was the Celtics? Yeah, probably. If Kyrie has agreed to stay for 4 or 5 years or whatever, then yes, give me Anthony Davis, because that guy can be, of course, maybe the best player in the league. I understand that's a little more difficult to do when you're not a ball handler in today's league, but if we remember, just before the whole Lakers thing started this season, the guy was setting the world on fire, so, yeah. Now, if Anthony Davis is not going to happen, then everything I said earlier about this team potentially still being better, I guess I can just repeat all that stuff, but I'm not going to. Of course, there's a chance that somebody else could become available. Don't know. That would be a case-by-case basis. Anyway, let's get to the idea if Kyrie leaves, which is certainly possible. The rumors are out there, the Knicks, the Nets, the Lakers, whoever else. And, of course, this year was not pretty for Kyrie and this team, and in terms of behind-the-scenes stuff and sometimes directly on-the-scene stuff with looking passive-aggressive or disinterested, especially in that last game on defense, or just flat-out yelling at Gordon Hayward for making a pass to Jason Tatum at the end of a Magic game, which really wasn't even that bad of a pass. So, all these things have happened with Kyrie, right? So if he leaves, then of course, that's a pretty big void on offense, and I think the next thing you hope for is that at least Horford would stay, because if Horford stayed, then the defense would hold up, and then you could just hope that between Tatum and Jalen and Hayward getting more shots, and of course Hayward hopefully being Jazz Hayward again, that the offense could at least be solid. It would also be cool to see Tatum really featured. I think at that point he would maybe be the number one option. There's reason to believe Hayward would be, but at that point, I think you do kind of give the reins to Tatum a lot, and you let him get more screens and things like that. And I actually think that team could be pretty exciting. But of course, Horford could leave because of his age, and maybe he thinks that it would be better for him to just go to a better team. Maybe given how much money he's made in his career and all that, he just wants to prioritize going for a title. I think there's reason to believe the Warriors would go for him depending on who they end up losing this offseason. So, if that were to happen, if Horford left, then I think the Celtics would struggle to... Well, maybe they would still make the playoffs in the East, but it would definitely be a bit of a tougher time, and at that point you would really hope that they could find some sort of a defensive replacement. I don't think Robert Williams is ready right now. He shows signs as a rim protector and all that, but defensive instincts and all that, he's got to improve. Aaron Baines is not good enough to be a defensive anchor. I mean, he's solid off the bench, but it's a totally different thing to what Horford's been doing. So that would be a pretty decent drop-off, if you ask me. Now, granted, the team would also have a lot of cap space at that point, so maybe they could make some enticing offers and they could fix the thing up pretty fast, but I think they would be very lucky if that happened, if you ask me. I guess I can get to all the draft picks they have between their own pick, the Clippers pick, maybe the Grizzlies pick. Pretty sure they're going to get the Kings pick. I forget exactly what that one is, but I think it's, as long as it's not number 1, the Celtics get it, but there might be something else I'm forgetting. That's a lot of ammo. I doubt they end up using all of those. Although I guess if Kyrie and Horford left, then maybe they would at that point, but you gotta assume that their intentions are to move some of those picks. And whether that ends up being for some star or just solid players to retool the roster or whatever, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it comes back to Kyrie and then Horford. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at on the Celtics. Offseason could go well, could not go well, could end up somewhere in the middle. We'll just have to see.